Welcome to episode 4 of The Invisible Hand on the Fireground. Tonight's guest is Brendan Manning. Brendan is a retired battalion chief with the New York City Fire Department out of Division 6, who was working on Father's Day 2001, also known as the Forgotten Fire, in Astoria when a building blew up, nearly taking the lives of 50 guys. Brendan will share his story of survival that day, and as a testimony to Brendan's survival, he woke up the next morning and was quoted in the Daily News saying, "Where are my guys?" So with me today, Brendan.
Thank you.
Brendan,
Good
thanks for
evening.
being here.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
I'm really honored that you're here. I mean, I was expecting, I normally do this via Zoom, and this is nice that you're sitting here you actually covered here. So
I
this
actually
is
covered here, and I had heard many places of the stories of this storied firehouse in the 60s and 70s. So I was very happy to be here myself.
Well, you know what's kind of ironic is that I remember being in 17 truck. I remember you were in 33 truck. You started in 33. No, you started in 32 truck.
32 truck, correct.
Right, and then you transferred down to 33
And
truck.
then
I remember that.
transferred to
Yeah.
33 truck, correct.
Right, and I remember being a Johnny Lieutenant. I got promoted in 95, and you were the senior chauffeur, like in 33 truck. I was very impressed. I was like, wow, this guy.
I was an old guy. I was an old guy all the way through. I was always the old guy. And,
Well, you aged out.
I aged out.
You'd
That's
still
right.
be here, right? So
I got to that major 65 number, and they said I couldn't play here anymore, and I had to go home.
and that is a little bit on the horizon for me. I still got 5 years, so
Okay.
God willing, I'll be able to make it till 65. And I'm on the deputies list, so hopefully I'll get promoted. Maybe I'll go to training. But anyway, so you're a Bronx guy. I think you
Bronx
grew up.
guy?
What you grew up in Riverdale?
I grew up in Riverdale. I went to Cardinal Hayes High School on 153rd Street and the Grand Concourse. I was there for 4 years, graduated in 1972. And then I went to Lehman College, again in the Bronx. And I graduated there. It took me a little extra time, but I graduated in January of 1977.
77. I was 16 years old. You went to Hayes.
Went to Cardinal Hayes.
That was in my response area when I was in 17 truck. That was the Irish Christian Brothers, right?
That was the Irish Christian Brothers, and I used to sit there looking out the window on the concourse and saw a 41 engine up and down the concourse all day long. That was from late 1968 to 72. So they were going to fires here in the Bronx in those years.
Wow. I went to Power Memorial, and we had there was a few high schools. It was Power, All Hallows, maybe?
All Hallows.
And Rice.
Right.
All had the Irish Christian Brothers.
Yep.
And they were tough, and I remember I was a pipsqueak when I was a freshman. I remember being scared to death. I was 14 years old, taking the subway in from Woodside into the west side of Manhattan, and I remember those brothers used to scare the heck out of me, man. They were just like...
They were tough. You didn't talk in school, and you didn't step out of line because you were gonna know about it real quick.
But I look back on this Catholic education, and I think it really molded us. The nuns we had in grammar school, they get a hard time sometimes. And the brothers, they were tough, and I don't think what happened back then could really fly today. It's just they were heavy-handed.
It was a different time, a different school, different times, different measures, different students, and that's the way it was. You didn't talk back. You just do what you were told, and if you didn't, you weren't going to be there.
But I think this Catholic school upbringing, I'm blessed. I feel blessed that I went to Catholic school. I'm glad that I didn't go to public school. My mother fought hard. I mean, we had no money whatsoever, and I remember paying for my own tuition, And but I think a lot of us in the fire department are graduates from the Catholic school, the parochial school system in New York City, and I think it instilled in us a sense of morality.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I remember my father was a telephone. He worked in the telephone company. He was a lineman for the telephone company, and at the time, Cardinal Hayes High School was $15 a month. And he would say, "Oh my God, $15 a month. How are we going to pay for this school?"
Right.
Now it almost costs that much to take the train to get to Cardinal Hayes now.
Yeah, I think it was the good thing about Powell. I remember it being $600. I started in '75, and it was $600 freshman year right to senior year,
Huh.
and then I went on to St. Francis College, where I had the Franciscans. Totally different atmosphere than the Irish Christian Brothers.
Huh? Okay.
Much more, maybe scholarly or laid back, or had a whole different style. But I really it was an all boys high school. Yours, I think you went to all
Cardinal
boys.
Hayes was all boys, yeah.
And I don't regret it. So I feel that going into the FDNY, a lot of us were products of the Catholic school system, and we had this sense of service, of morality. I think of firefighters having almost like a calling, almost like a priest. I think that it's a calling.
I would agree with that. I'd say being a fireman is a calling. Some people get here and they just after a few months or even one fire, they just say, "Hey, you know what? This isn't for me."
Yeah.
And I've seen that. I've seen people come across from the cops,
Yeah.
and they go to one fire and they say, "Hey, you know what? This isn't for me," and they go back to the cops or they flat out quit. And I've seen that, not often, but from time to time I have seen that when I was working here. So, but then again, you see a lot in 37 years. So
Right, you did 37 years. I'm on 35 now.
I
so.
did 37 years, and I can't say every day was a good day, but I would say 98% of the time that I came to work,
Yeah.
it was a good time.
No, I could tell. I remember you from 33 Truck because I was assigned to the 19th Battalion, and I so remember you. That's why I remember. We always stayed in touch after we met each other back in, I guess, '95. So.
I would say the 12 years that I was in Jerome Avenue in 75 and 33 were the 12 happiest years
Right.
of my career.
You guys were busy.
Busy, a lot of
A
fires.
lot of work. Yeah.
And there was just this love-hate relationship that there was one big dysfunctional family that we never thought was ever going to end. We were just going to live there forever. And unfortunately, we all made the one very terrible mistake, and we got old.
We got old, yeah. So, before you got on the fire department, you graduated Lehman College. Did you do something before you got on the
I
on
did.
The fire
I
department?
worked for the telephone company,
Oh, wow.
and I was a cable splicer in Midtown Manhattan in the manholes.
Yeah.
And that's what I did for close to 3 years. And then the fire department called me, and I remember I was on lunch, and they said, "We're offering you the position with the New York City Fire Department. Do you accept?" So I said, "Yes, yes, yes." And she said, "Okay." She gave me the information, and 2 weeks later, that's about all I had. 2 weeks later,
Yeah.
I was down at City Hall being sworn in.
So you took that man's test in '77.
That's what they tell me it was a man's test. It was tough. It was a tough test. You had to run a mile in a certain amount of time. You have to climb over walls. You had to carry up a dummy
Crazy.
that would probably be unacceptable in today's standards. So, but
12-foot wall. Yeah.
it was.
Yeah.
Was that what it was?
Broad jump.
I
yeah.
forget.
I was training for that test. I just was too young. I was only 16. You know?
It was tough, and I was banged up, but I made it, and then it was held up for some reason. I don't know why, but I waited maybe 2 years for it, and there it was.
So what year did you finally come on the fire department?
I came on September 5, 1981.
81.
1981, yep. And I was telling you before, I came to this firehouse, we relocated in December of 1981. And it was a bitter cold night. The guys had gotten burned at a 3-alarm fire, and 48 truck came pulling up the quarters, dripping with frozen ice. It looked like it was a truck from the 1920s, packed in ice. It was really a spectacle to see.
Yeah. I remember coming up from, we were in Mott Haven, and we would come over here as a towel ladder because they had all these buildings were vacant, and I remember coming here for vacant buildings fires for up until I got into the squad.
Many times to 75 and 33 that I said, I want to go there. And it took me 7 years to get there, but that's where I ended up.
Funny thing about 75 and 33. So my father-in-law was a captain of 41 engine in the late 70s during the war years. He said in his short time that he was there, the fire duty just moved up the west side of the Bronx, where now they used to do the interchange, where 75 would come down and he used to call it workload relief. And then at the end of his tenure as the captain in 41 engine, they were going up to 75
Yeah.
to give them a break.
Yeah, that's
so that's
right.
how fast the fire duty had spread up in the.
And we had, our captain was Tom Sikel, who is now deceased, but he was a lieutenant in 58-2, was the second section of 58 truck.
A 27 truck had the
It,
second
it
section.
became, or maybe it was
27
27-2,
two, then they became
58.
Yep.
And so he was this tough old bird that wasn't very friendly, but as time went on, we got to be friends. And when he retired, I think he went out to City Island for his last couple of years. And he was actually a nice guy.
Right.
Grumpy as he was all right.
It was so funny because there were second sections. A 17 truck had two sections,
Right.
41 engine, 50 engine. All these companies had second sections. Then all of a sudden, everything just moved up north, and then all those second sections became newer companies.
Right.
59 truck went up to Sedgwick Avenue, and the
Right.
27 Battalion. They all moved out of the South Bronx because everything was by you now.
Right.
So-
59 truck used to be with 85 engine, who I believe 85 engine became 53 truck on
Yes,
City
they
Island.
closed them. On the Tin House on Boston
Right.
Road. So all this fire duty, and you were right there, catching it all.
I was at the end of it. I mean, we 75 and 33 went to a lot of fires. We went to a lot of scary fires. I was scared. Maybe
Yeah.
some of the other guys weren't scared. I was scared.
Yeah.
And we went to some really hairy jobs
Yeah.
that, you kind of say to yourself, wow, okay, boys, we lucked out again. We got out of this one.
Did you ever feel like, I always felt this way, did you ever feel like when you had those moments that it was like a God thing, that maybe there was someone looking out for us? Because I always felt that way. I always had my medals on, I had my cross.
I always felt in some of those spots, you just say to yourself, how in the world did we get out of that one? I mean,
Yeah.
it was scary. There was one particular fire that we went to. The lieutenant, it was in 59 truck. He made a rescue. His name was Mike Teleska.
Oh, sure, I know Mike, yeah.
Mike, and he went up the aerial ladder to the 6th floor and pulled this guy out. And I just said, "Oh my God, look at that!" And we went into the fire department. There was fire everywhere, and I just said, "How did we ever get out of that one?"
I can remember times where, like, we'd get up there, especially on the floor above. We did a lot of work on the floor above when I was in 17, especially in the squad. And I was actually, I would say, like, little prayer, little Hail Mary or something, just because it just got so hairy. They talk about there's no atheists in foxholes. I'd like to say there's no atheists on the floor above either.
I agree. I was in some very, very hairy, scary fires,
yeah.
and wow. You just have to say to yourself, somebody must have been with us to get us out of that one.
I think so. I really think that there's just no way that we could do this job without some kind of divine intervention. That's why I call this the hand, and I capitalize the hand, because I really feel that either God is sending down angels or He's just directly, helping us out. Because there's sometimes that you just shake your head like, how the heck did we get out of this?
Oh,
one?
I felt that many, many times.
Were you at that job where the cockloft blew down on the concourse? Did you remember that job?
I was not. I was in a 32 truck at the time.
Oh, yeah.
But that went to a 4th alarm. A lot of guys got burned.
Yeah.
And the cockloft blew down on that, and on the guys.
And they all survived.
And
which is
they
amazing.
all survived. A lot of them got pretty badly burned. There was one lieutenant in 59 truck who I believe, had to retire from that one.
Right.
Billy.
Yeah, I know I remember.
I forget his name.
Right.
Started with an S. They'll kill
Yeah,
me
I know.
if I don't know his name.
I know who you're talking about. And the aide from the 17th Battalion, I
And
think.
the aide from the 17th Battalion got burned.
John Calamari was burnt up pretty bad. Cause I
John
remember,
Calamari was burned. Phil Del Vecchio was there.
Yeah.
He got burned, I believe. Billy Spillane, no, that wasn't Spillane, but I forget his name. I apologize, Billy, if you're listening
Spinelli?
to
This
this.
is Spinelli.
Billy Spinelli.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, Billy, if you're listening to this.
Right.
But he got burned
Yeah, he got
pretty bad.
pretty
And
bad,
I
yeah.
remember months later, he came back to work, and we were at a fire on Webster Avenue. And he came over to us, and I went to shake his hand, and I had forgotten that his
Yeah.
hands were so badly burned, and
Yeah.
and he just winced, and I said,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry I did that." Oh. But I think he retired shortly after that.
Yeah. So you moving on. You got what year did you get promoted to lieutenant?
I got promoted to lieutenant in probably May of 2000.
Yeah.
I had almost 19 years.
That's a long time.
It's a long time
to be a firefighter and then become lieutenant.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
an old guy.
There was a firefighter in 17 truck, Pete Lazinskis, who was probably
I know Pete. Yep.
maybe one of the best firefighters that
Yeah.
had ever been on the FDNY.
I
mean,
knew Pete because when I was driving 33 and he was driving 17,
Yeah.
we would relocate back and forth to each other,
Yeah.
and we were in the same groups.
Yeah.
So that's how I got to know Pete
Yeah.
Lasinkas.
And he got promoted with like 20-something years.
Yeah,
And he
yeah.
became a phenomenal lieutenant. And like you, with a lot of experience. So you had so much to offer. You got assigned to Queens.
I got assigned to Queens, the 14th Division,
Right.
and I covered just a couple of spots, and then I went to Ladder 163 in the 4-9 Battalion.
Yes. My old neighborhood,
Your
Woodside.
old neighborhood,
Yeah.
Woodside, Queens.
I lived 3 blocks. I used to park my car at your firehouse.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the guys weren't happy. They say, "Who's this guy with the Mustang?" And there it was, you know.
It was a nice neighborhood. I enjoyed I was there for 6 years. I was in the truck for a short time, year maybe, and then the rest of the time in Engine 325.
So we're going to talk about the Father's Day fire. And,
Okay.
it was June of 2001, 3 months before 9/11.
Correct.
And I remember it so distinctly because I had cousins over from Ireland staying with me. And I remember saying to myself that this was such an unusual event for us to have such a catastrophic loss of
Right.
firefighters, And I remember that day, and I just tell you, I'm going to give you my perspective of that day because then I want to talk to you about, what happened with you because I love this. We'll get to it in a minute with the headlines sent in the paper about you. But I remember it was Sunday. It was June. It was, and we had gone over to a fire on the east side of Harlem. I was a lieutenant in 58 Engine. We had gone over to Lexington Avenue and 110th Street, whatever it was. It was a vacant, and it was not much of a fire, And I remember Squad 41 being there. And I remember this box coming in for a fire in Astoria because 288 was a squad, but they were first due. So they needed another squad, so 41 got assigned. They left. I remember going back to the firehouse. John Calamari was in 26. I was working. And, we were listening to the radio because I heard 3 lines stretched. Trucks are in there opening up, and it was like, and then I left the room, and then it hit the fan. So tell me about that day. Do you remember, what was it?
It was that day. There was a fire up the block, I believe, like an all hands, and we don't really go over that far, but there was a Class 3 alarm. Class 3 alarm is usually it's triggered by sometimes the guys are working there and the dust sets off the alarm or something like that. So usually it's nothing too serious. But this time we went there, and for some reason, I remember that day, we were going over there. It was us, I forget who else, for this Class 3 alarms, and I just got this feeling like the hairs on the back of my neck went up. And I said, I don't know about this. And we went there, and there was light haze all around the top of the building. So we called the 1075. which is
So
a working
just so
fire.
the audience will know, I'm going to put this in perspective because you're coming from Woodside, and the fire was in Astoria down by the Triborough
Long way.
Bridge.
It's a long way.
That's that's a long distance.
That's a long distance.
Yeah, okay.
So we all gave a 1075, which is a signal for a working fire.
Mm-hmm.
That brought, at the time, I think it was 3 engines and 2 trucks and a chief. But people were coming delayed because of the fire up the block. So there was the concentration of units that would have been there were now already engaged. And so the companies that now had to come for this signal of a working fire were coming from a greater distance, including us. So the chief was Chief Siegel at the time. He was
Seelig.
Seelig.
Billy Seelig,
Billy
yeah.
Seelig, right.
Yeah.
He was the battalion commander in the 4-9 battalion, and he said, Brendan, go around to the back of the building, see if you can get in to the basement.
Were you first due at this point?
We ended up being first due,
Okay.
which is a long way to be a first
That's
due.
a real long way.
A
Because
long
you're
drive.
on 52nd Street and the fire was on like
22nd Street, 21st Street.
And plus north. You had to go from
Right.
Roosevelt Avenue all the way over to like Astoria Boulevard.
Right.
Which is like,
A long way. And
long way.
it seemed like we were driving for a long time.
right.
And so we get there, and Chief said, go back to the rear of the building, see if you can get in. So we tried to get in through the building in the back. There was a door there. Couldn't get in. We were doing with our normal forcible entry tools. I said, okay, listen, guys, get the Hearst tool. They had just given us this brand new, brandy new $10,000 Hearst tool. And so we tried to get the doors open with that. We got it open a little bit, and we bent the arms of this Hearst tool, and they just bent. So the $10,000 tool was no longer of any good use.
Yeah.
So we were able to get it open just a little bit. And I was able to squeeze in there, and we, through more, we were able to twist it. It turned out that the door had 2 metal bars from the ceiling into the concrete floor. That's why it wouldn't work. So we broke one of the bars, and we were able to get in to squeeze in. And they had given me a brand spanking new thermal imaging camera, which is different than the ones that we have today. This one was like the size of a small television
Yes,
screen.
yes,
Now
they
they're much smaller, compact,
Yeah.
much more.
Yes, 2001. Yeah, they were. I never got proficient in the thermal imaging camera because I never really used one. But yeah, they were like $25,000, and they were.
It
like
was
really big.
$25,000, really big. It was
Yeah.
cumbersome, but I put it up to the ceiling. I remember there was hot water falling on me, so I thought that they got into the front and they were putting water on the fire. That's
Right.
why it was warm.
Right.
No, it was the fire was up there, was up in the ceiling, and I put the camera up to the ceiling, and I said, Chief, the screen is all red, and that's as far as I got. I woke up 6 hours later in the Cornell Medical Center burn unit in Manhattan, found out I had a fractured skull in 3 places, a broken shoulder, a broken jaw, a broken eye orbit. My head had been cut open from the front to the back. My helmet fell off. My hearing had been, the fire had gone into my ear, and I needed surgery to repair. There's 3 bones in the inside of the ear. I needed surgery to repair that, and I had injured my sternum also. So I ended up on medical leave, and I was in the burn unit for a couple of weeks. And I always say those burn unit people, they're all going to heaven. Every one of them. They were just amazingly wonderful people, and I couldn't have said anything better. I can't ever say anything better about those doctors and nurses in the burn unit. They were terrific.
Well, that being said, it was saving us. So, there's a quote. I mean, your picture in the paper is amazing that you even survived. I mean, I remember seeing you very shortly after that. I remember visiting in your house, and you did lose your hearing. I remember that I think you still have problems with your hearing to this day. And I mean, you were really banged up. And you're quoted in the paper saying, "Angels have plans for me," and then it says here, "Fire Hero," a different paper, I guess. Angels did their part. So, I mean, I can't believe we did lose 3 firefighters, and I want to talk about those firefighters because what you're talking about. So, at that exact moment when that happened, I had gone out of the room for a second. I came back, and John Calamari's working, and he looks at me and goes, "Danny, the building just blew up," and I had a chill. I thought we had just lost like 20 guys.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the building, it's gone.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how in God's name that we only lost.
We only lost 3 guys. Yeah. It's actually when the explosion happened, they showed pictures of it from the safety, and they showed it was actually pushed off the pylons where they put the base of the building. It was actually pushed off those pylons with a tremendous explosion.
I mean, the building looks like something that you saw from World War II, like
Absolutely.
in Dresden or in London.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah.
I mean, the building was gone.
The building was gone, and I think it went to like a 10-alarm fire with all the units that were actually ended up being there.
Yeah.
And just piling through, digging through on their hands and knees, the guys that were there. It was, I saw pictures of it later, and I said, wow,
So the fact that you survived that, and the Angels did their part. I mean, they did that part a lot. Unfortunately, God rest his soul. I mean, Brian Fay. Brian. It's funny. Brian and I came on together. And he went to 249 engine when we came out of Proby School. I went to 17 truck. Then he transferred to 155. Then he went to Squad 288, and then he went to Rescue 4. And we always kept in touch. And he actually gave me a helmet, because we had these crazy helmets, and he gave me a volley helmet. And, we'd see each other, even though we didn't see each other a lot, every time we saw each other was just a great moment, And, it's just, I still think about him, Actually, I just sent a picture of our Proby class to his wife, and she was so grateful to get it, So
I would agree with that. Whenever you go to a reunion and you haven't seen guys in a long time, guys just don't shake their hands. They hug.
They hug.
Oh, yeah. And it's like, hey, remember that time we almost bought the farm on that one? And it's true. And it's true because it's like there's a bond that stays with you forever,
I was covered in sock, and Brian drove me one time. He was working at 288, and he was a chauffeur, and we had a fire out in Corona, and I was grateful to get to the fire because I was shaking after I got. He drove that rig about 70 miles an hour, and I had my feet up on the dashboard, and I'm looking at Brian, and he's just wheeling away, and anyway, it was that kind of thing. And John's from my old neighborhood. He was from Woodside. I didn't know John very well. We played basketball against each other, and his sister Rosie was we took classes together in St. Francis College. So John, I just remember a tall guy. I was a little pipsqueak, and he was like dominating me in basketball.
He was a big guy. He was like he had to be 6'3", 6'4", and he was wide as and he was a just monster of a guy, strong as a bull, And,
Harry, I didn't know well, even though I covered in sock. I didn't know him. And Joe Vasilla. Joe was in 116. He got banged up as well. He survived.
He survived also,
which is a miracle.
He needed several surgeries to put him back together again. He actually retired from that fire. He didn't go back to work. And John Downing, he just didn't make it. I think he was declared dead on arrival at the hospital, Elmhurst Hospital. I believe they took it to him. I'm not sure on that one, but
I mean, the only thing I just remember is that being in the firehouse, and I was sitting in my office, and I'm with John, and we're listening very intently to the radio, and I buffed that job because buffing means that we was listening to the radio because, I knew that it was going on. It was like kind of my old neighborhood, but it wasn't. So I was very interested, and I remember hearing the report. At box 7, whatever the box was, there's 3 lines stretched. Trucks are opening up. I mean, and I'm picturing like 30 guys at least minimum inside the building.
Yeah.
And when I left, and just John said it blew up, and then I saw the pictures. I mean, wow.
It was like I would say, you know, it's number one on my 37-year career. I went through a lot of fires.
I know you
You
did,
know,
yeah.
in
Yeah.
hundreds of fires in in my 37 years. But that the top three, that's definitely probably number one. It's got to be number one. There's a couple others that are close, but in regard to fatalities and people getting injured and the amount of destruction, absolutely number one.
So that quote, I mean, I understand that quote when you said that, you know, angels have plans for me, and I believe it. You know, I mean, I really believe that. You know, unfortunately, that we did lose 3 firefighters, but it could have been 30.
It could have been 30, it could have been 50, the way that the building exploded, because again,
Right.
you know, companies were coming from a long way.
Yeah.
If the building exploded when it did, and if there was no fire up the block, more guys would have been there, and they would have been in the building already. But
Yes.
that all hands, which is like a one alarm fire, was up the block, so those guys were busy, and an all hands brings approximately 40, 50 guys at the time. I'm not sure on that, but those guys would have been there at that building when the building exploded. So, because they were already engaged, other guys were coming from a long way, and it exploded when it did, and there were only 3 fatalities and numerous injuries on top of that. I think there were 50 other guys that were hurt
Yeah.
that required medical leave from that fire.
Wow. And it's referred to, you know, if you say the Father's Day fire, that's one of the most, you know,
That's-
memorable fires
yes.
in the FDNY history
And it's also called the Forgotten Fire
because of 9/11.
because of 9/11.
Yeah.
And soon after that, 9/11 occurred with catastrophic results, and the Father's Day fire was now become the Forgotten Fire because it was just relegated to the annals of fire department history.
Yeah, I didn't forget it. I mean, I still, it's imprinted on my brain. You know, funny story, you know, how life, you know, you talked about fate and angels doing their parts, but Squad 41 was assigned as a squad, and they got lost
Huh? Yep.
because they were coming over to Triborough, and I know coming over to Triborough, you make that hard right, and they missed the turn, so they had to go up to the next exit, and that little delay saved them from being in
Absolutely.
there when it blew up. you
So
know?
maybe, just maybe, somebody pushed them that way
Yeah.
so that they wouldn't be inside that building.
Which they would have been.
Which they would have been. You
Right.
know, like our rescue and our squads, they're like the CEOs of Goldman Sachs,
Yeah.
Sachs and IBM. You know, they're the
Right.
they're the elite. You know, and they're like the Marines. Send in the Marines,
Yeah.
and they'll go get the job done. You know, and they rescue firemen.
Yeah.
The rescue people rescue firemen,
Yeah.
and that's what they do.
Yeah, so I remember like talking to because I saw 41. We were there at this fire, and they were calling them like, you know, we had already gone under control, and they're like, yeah, we need you in Queens, and I forget who the chauffeur was. Maybe it was what's his name, Kevin, Irish guy, Kevin. I can't remember his last name, but they got lost. You know, and if it had been anybody else, if I had been working in that company that day, we would have been there.
You would have been
Because
there.
I know the neighborhood.
Yeah,
you know,
you would have been
so-
there, and you might not be sitting here talking about this whole thing right now. So,
Yeah.
so there's a plan. There
Yeah.
definitely is a plan, you know. And
So you're retired now. I know you missed the job terribly.
yep, I am 2.5 years retired. If I
Yeah.
could have changed my birth certificate, I would have legally done so, and
Yeah.
I'd have still been here. However, it wasn't meant to be.
Right. So what's life like now? I know you volunteer a lot in the
I
food-
volunteer at
Okay.
St. Anne's Episcopal Church. It's a food bank and soup kitchen on
Yeah.
East 140th Street
Yeah.
and St. Anne's Avenue.
Yeah.
And we feed about 150, 200 people a day.
So you're still doing God's work.
We're still doing God's work. We're still it's a wonderful feeling to be able to help these people. I'm trying to get my Spanish together. You kind of speak Spanish fairly well.
Yo puedo.
I have bought a whole bunch of books, and I'm trying to learn vocabulary because then I can talk to them a little bit.
I'll give you a trick. Watch cartoons in Spanish
Really?
because it's at a child's level, and it's a great way to learn Spanish.
Okay, I will take that up. I'm learning. I'm memorizing vocabulary, and I say things to some of these ladies, and they come to the door there, and I'm handing out the food, and I say something to them, and they like, what is this guy trying to say? They say to me, say it in English, will you please? So
The funny thing is that I do the food pantry up in my town, in St. John's, and it's sad, but I'm the translator. So when we have a good Latino population there, so some of them speak, but some of them don't. So every time it's like, Danny.
Oh, it's great. I mean, I've come a long way in the eight months that I've been there. I can kind of get myself known to what I'm trying to convey to them, without them busting out laughing. But
That's good stuff.
So there you go.
Well, Brendan, I can't tell you how grateful I am that you're here. It's I didn't realize that about. I never thought about that from that perspective, that they had this other fire. That
Yep.
how many other guys would have been in there?
Yep.
And-
That we could easily have lost 10 times the amount that we did.
Easily.
Chiefs to probies,
Oh,
from
my
chiefs to
goodness.
probies. Like the
So-
23rd Street fire, there would have been deputy chiefs all the way down to brand new probies dead in that fire. But
Wow.
somebody pushed us the other way,
And you're here to talk about
and
it.
I'm here to talk about it.
How's your health these days? I know your hearing's still. You're still a little banged up.
Otherwise, I'm doing good. I have no complaints, and if I died tomorrow, I would say thank you, God, for a wonderful life, and here I am.
Wow. So I want to thank you again, Brendan. Thanks for being here.
You're very welcome, Danny.
And that was Brendan Manning, retired battalion chief with the FDNY. He worked in the 6th Division, and that was his perspective on the Father's Day fire. If you'd like to share your story, please reach out to me on any of my social media. And until then, thanks for being here and be safe.